on a break, as is MLS. And then we'll do some sports court, as we do every single Thursday. Brian Dunseth, John Paul, JP Chunga, Jason Batacchio, Kurt Schmidt, me, Spence Checketts, all of you, the great listeners. And that guy, Porter Larson, I think you were the first person to point out that LaMelo Ball may not necessarily be behaving the way that you want your star athlete to be behaving in Charlotte, right? I mean, that's kind of the understanding of the deal.
I don't know that I was the first one.
You're the first one I heard because I don't live on the internet.
But yeah, and most of it had to do with like his driving. I saw like week in and week out, I saw a new video of LaMelo Ball in a different car running stoplights and like peeling out in front of people and almost hitting pedestrians. And I thought like, yeah, it might be a reflection of more things going on in Charlotte. And apparently they didn't value him enough to keep him around. A really talented player, but I think he's got to learn how to be a pro and also has to learn how to play the pro game a little bit as well, because it's a different story than when you're in high school and you can just, go out and score 100 points casually. Again, really talented player, but not one that I would necessarily want in my locker room, at least up to this point.
Yeah, I mean, look, LaMelo Ball and Anthony Edwards in the backcourt, ton of talent there. But Minnesota, they had a really, really good team a couple of years ago, and they have broken it down. Cat is in New York. Naz Reid is in Charlotte. So we'll see how it plays out. But Minnesota's kind of a good place to go if you're having a behavioral problem, because you can behave yourself in Minneapolis.
Well, and the weird thing is that the Wolves seem to always have a good roster. I shouldn't say always, but they seem to lately have a good roster, but not necessarily a good mix, right? It's got to be a mix of having good players, but also having players that fit together both on and off the floor. And I wonder, in a locker room that houses both Rudy Gobert, LaMelo Ball, Anthony Edwards, keep going down the list, how that works as far as a dynamic, even off the court. A few guys there that are notoriously not exactly easy to get along with. So I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, and they're moving away from kind of the current trend of trying to add size. I have no idea who's going to play power forward for them. Joan Behringer is their backup center. Maybe you play Jaden McDaniels as a smallish power forward. I don't know. There's a hole in that roster now. But it could be the start of a very busy NBA offseason. Jaylen Brown apparently is on the move, potentially from Boston. So we'll get into all of it today on a Thursday edition of the program. Our first guest will be Brian Dunseth. Before Dunny stops by, courtesy of our good friends at DraftKings, it's time now for your opening tip. Now, DraftKings Sports is live in all 50 states. Yes, that means you, Utah. The whole world is watching one tournament right now. Group stage chaos, knockout drama, stoppage time heartbreak. The DraftKings Sports app is now live in Utah, so whether you're catching the early kickoff before work or the late match at the bar, you're in on every minute, every moment, every match, all in one app. The world's biggest stage is in the palm of your hand. New DraftKings customers sign up with the code ESPN 700, spend $5 and get $200 in total rewards. That's promo code ESPN 700 in partnership with DraftKings. The crown is yours. Event trading is offered by DraftKings Predictions, a CFTC-registered introducing broker. Trading involves risk of loss. Market availability varies. Eligibility restrictions apply. $50 every 7 days via click-to-claim issued in non-withdrawable prediction dollars that expire in 1 year. That ends June the 28th. Terms are dkng.co/predictions promo. The boys have already done a little work today, just so you know. So
recording some pods?
Yeah, so the voice is kind of hanging in there. But look, as we have discussed, the Utah Jazz are going to move up in the Western Conference this year. Breaking news, some teams are going to have to move down. So as we kind of try to understand what the landscape is going to look like, there could potentially be what some people believe to be, I guess only time will tell, an unprecedented amount of player movement this offseason. We've already seen all-stars traded. We've already seen generational players traded in Giannis Antetokounmpo. And the latest is the Charlotte Hornets, after a really good step forward last year, have decided to kind of break down this team and they've traded LaMelo Ball and Josh Green to the Minnesota Timberwolves for Naz Reid and a bunch of different picks. So apparently news broke about 72 hours ago that Charlotte was taking phone calls, bottom line on LaMelo Ball. So LaMelo Ball played some really good basketball in Charlotte. Charlotte won 44 games last year. And look, 20 points, 7 assists, 5 rebounds, shot 37% from 3 in 72 regular season games. That's the most games he's played since 2021. But he did have a lot of injury issues prior to being able to play this season. And as we've discussed, there's some behavioral things kind of out there that maybe a lot of teams are kind of scared away from. Brandon Miller, Con Knippel, that's kind of going to be center stage for Charlotte now. But ultimately, what does this mean for the Western Conference? What does it mean for the Utah Jazz? What does it mean for Minnesota's potential to kind of remain where they were a year ago and where they kind of have been since they made the Gobert deal as a top 5/6 team in the Western Conference? So Howard Beck joined us yesterday, and Howard predicted that the Jazz next season, most likely ceiling is somewhere around the 7 or 8 seed, 45 wins. For Phoenix, got them the 8 seed last year. 42 wins for Portland, got them the 7 seed. The reason they were 7 is they won the play-in, and Phoenix, of course, lost. Clippers were 9 at 42 wins, and the Golden State Warriors were 10 at 47 wins. Golden State drafted Yaxel Lindenberg out of Michigan, and the LA Clippers were able to grab Keaton Wagler, the young man out of Illinois, who a lot of people like an awful lot. So, of course, Golden State is going to get Al Horford back. They already have Stephen Curry. I believe Draymond Green will be back, and Jimmy Butler. We'll see if they bring back Kristaps Porzingis. On paper, there's some things to like about Golden State, but that's a hypothetical because, of course, you're assuming full health for a list of players that have not been able to stay healthy. The Clippers are continuing to be an interesting team to watch with the Kawhi stuff because, again, Darius Garland, Kawhi Leonard, there's some things to like about the Clippers roster, but if there's something that is going to go down with Kawhi, will they break it down and build around their new rookie Keaton Wagler, therefore allowing the Jazz to move up? Now, the group of teams last year in the West, there were 4 teams that were clearly tanking. That was Dallas, that was Memphis, that was Sacramento, that was Utah. And then the Pelicans are just a joke of an organization. They didn't even own their draft pick. It went to Atlanta. They just couldn't figure it out. So I think the Pelicans, the Grizzlies, and the Kings will be in a perpetual rebuild over the next 3 to 4 years. But the Jazz and the Mavericks are going to take massive steps forward. Dallas gets Kyrie Irving back. And, of course, they already have the reigning rookie of the year in Cooper Flagg. There's a lot to like about what they're doing in Dallas with a new head coach, Dusty May, who 4 years ago was at Florida Atlantic. And then since then, he's won a national championship, went to 2 Final Fours, and now he's the coach of the Dallas Mavericks. Masai Ujiri has taken over in Dallas. So you have to assume that, like Utah, Dallas will take a step forward. Oklahoma City, San Antonio cement those two as the top 2 teams in the West. As long as Denver has Jokic, they're going to be in the mix. LA brings back Austin Reeves. What will they do with LeBron? Oh, by the way, they have a player named Luka Doncic, so I don't think it's realistic to believe the Jazz could surpass them. Houston is a wild card, but what does this mean for Minnesota? I don't know that I really love the direction of this franchise. I mean, the nice thing about having a Rudy Gobert, as we saw here for 9 years, like LaMelo Ball is a defensive sieve. He's like Keontae. They don't guard at all, and they don't even try. It's like they lose focus. And the Utah Jazz with Rudy Gobert at center always had very bad perimeter defensive players. Like we talked about Royce O'Neal like he was Bruce Bowen from 1999, and he was a fine defender, but he's like 6'3", over his skis more often than not, and unable to guard the other team's best wing with much effect. Donovan should be a better defender than he is. He seems to save most of his juice for offense, where he's dynamite. He was a really good defensive player in college. He was actually scouted as that. Joe Ingles, I mean, I don't know the last time Joe even ran. Like, can he sprint? Have we ever seen Joe Ingles sprint? Like, they had a group of horrific perimeter defensive players, but they were able to maintain a decent defensive kind of area metric because Rudy is that guy. He's that special. He's the best defensive player of this generation, and that includes Draymond Green. 4-time Defensive Player of the Year. Probably should have got more love in that direction this year. The award should have gone to Wembanyama, and it will probably go to Wembanyama for the next 15 years. But Minnesota makes this deal, for LaMelo Ball to go all in on their offensive attack with Anthony Edwards as his backcourt teammate. But there will be defensive issues there. Ant can guard, LaMelo cannot, but Rudy can clean it up. I don't know that we're going to see Minnesota fall all that much, but I don't think this deal means suddenly they're in the area of Oklahoma City and San Antonio. Rumors around Jaylen Brown potentially, Jaylen Brown potentially, according to several sources over the past 24 hours, the Celtics remain active in talks to trade Jaylen Brown. There have been some rumors regarding the Jazz potentially getting involved there. I don't think it's time for that. Oftentimes, if you do have a good young team that's growing maybe quicker than you thought that they would, you do want to make a move for a vet to expedite the process. We saw the Jazz do that with Mike Conley. But I just believe the Jazz are going to stay in the space where they love their young roster, and they're simply going to allow it to grow organically. And there are some hypothetical trade scenarios that seem to make a little bit of sense. Do you look at a Lowry Markkanen deal at the age of 29? I think Jalen's 26, 27, a little bit younger than Lowry. I mean, would you include Lowry Markkanen in some draft capital for Jaylen Brown? Is that something Boston would do? And, of course, anytime Boston is involved in rumors, remember Brad Stevens is running basketball operations, and Danny Ainge hired Brad Stevens. There's obviously some synergies there with the Ainges and Brad Stevens. So I do feel like this is shaping up to be a rather seismic NBA offseason. We'll see if the Utah Jazz get involved. My guess is they will not. All right, coming up next, big day, U.S. men's national team in action tonight. Excited to watch this one. It's the U.S. and Turkey at 8 o'clock. Not sure what we'll see as far as Mauricio Pochettino's lineup selection. The U.S. is already through. They're going to win the group. We might see some backup players. We got a grip of World Cup games going on right now. So Brian Dunseth will be our first guest. We'll do more Jazz and NBA with JP, John Paul Chunga, some Utes with Jason Batacchio, and then some RSL with Kurt Schmidt. Busy Thursday show, and it's good to have you with us right here on ESPN 700. Ecuador and Germany are tied at 1. Little surprise there, 36th minute. The U.S. men's national team in action tonight. Turkey A is the opponent, 8 o'clock local time. That can be seen on Fox. Tonight at 10:35 on KMYU, a little show we call Talkin' Real, episode 17, where my co-host is Pablo Mastroeni, because my usual co-host has ditched me, but is on the phone now. Brian Dunseth, how are you, sir?
I'm fantastic, my man. How are you?
I'm good. Where do we find you? What's the current state of things with you? It's been a long time.
Yeah, still in Monterrey, Mexico. Last night I was a part of South Africa's historic win over Korea Republic. That meant for the first time ever, South Africa is into the knockout rounds of a World Cup. And yeah, getting set for what looks to be a round of 32 matchup between Netherlands and Morocco in a couple days' time, just at the weekend.
Are you behaving yourself in Mexico for that long? I don't know that I have faith in myself to behave myself for as long as you've been in Mexico.
You know, my theory is I spend enough nights away from my family, so why risk any more nights away from my family by being a knucklehead? But no, listen, I've got a great group. I'm a part of a broadcast team where I'm the only American, that 99% are English, that have been involved in Champions League finals, FA Cup finals, Euros, previous World Cups. So I'm like a kid in a candy shop on the English banter, but a great group. I've had some great games, and I'll do this final game here in Monterrey, Mexico, which I think is the best stadium, especially the best aesthetic look, with kind of the Saddle Mountains in behind the stadium. And then off to Philadelphia for round of 16, July 4th, Germany, potentially against France. So It's been an incredible journey so far, and I think I'm coming up on about 3 weeks. 3 weeks of being in Mexico, and this city is incredibly safe. It's beautiful. The technology is phenomenal, except in my hotel room where I virtually get no internet.
That a guy. How's your Spanish, by the way?
I can understand a lot more than I can speak, but I've been I've been deemed the translator, the orderer, and when things go wrong, the one that everyone looks at to try to figure out how to communicate. So I would say I've been stretched to my limits in moments, but I've been very proud of myself for being able to kind of navigate this group of knuckleheads down here with the Spanish language.
I got to say thank you so much for your honesty. Like, Trey claims he's fluent, and he's so not. So I appreciate your honesty.
Well, I will let you know, and I haven't told Trey this, and I guarantee we're both going to get a text message at some point. I want you to know that there's an updated version of the Suzuki Samurai that is currently being driven among the streets in Monterrey, Mexico. And based on your giggle and my giggle, we are both picturing Trey in a Suzuki Samurai, topless, busting Vanilla Ice somewhere down like the M2 corridor in Monterey.
Are there spicy Cheetos and some horribly flavored Mountain Dew spilling on the seats is what I want to know.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I guarantee you it's like a blueberry Mountain Dew. It's like electric voltage somewhere down here. It probably has like 200 grams of sugar in the bottle. It's like an old school hybrid of a Jolt Cola and a Mr. Pibb all wrapped into one.
He should be studied by science. I don't know how he's still alive. It's actually quite phenomenal. But look, you may have already answered the question with the historic moment from South Africa. I wanted to ask you your favorite non-U.S. men's national team storyline so far.
Oh, that's a great question. Listen, I think we were all, we all had our I don't know if it was misgivings, but we all had our concerns about the expanded format. And just watching Cape Verde and Curacao and some of these smaller teams. I mean, again, last night, South Africa beating Korea Republic, Sung Hyun-min's side is incredible, because we thought that they were going to. There's so many great ones. Very, very oddly, I would say I'm loving Norway's story. I think that just the Norwegian Viking team announcement for their World Cup photos, then with whether they're going up the escalator, down the escalator, or the players on the field with the fans doing the Norwegian row after Odegaard slammed the drum twice. And then just watching Erling Haaland, one of the greatest goal scorers of this current generation, being able to get his goals and how fun he is on social media to follow. Those are, I think for me, that's one of the big stories that kind of genuinely brings a smile to my face.
Now, the U.S. men's national team, Dunny, before we get to tonight, before we get to what could lie ahead in the knockout round, what's impressed you most through 2 matches?
Sense of urgency and complete performances. I think I've said this time and time again with you on the show. I've been around Mauricio Pochettino and his coaching staff from day one, and to see him try to transmit, the South American mentality, the Argentine mentality, his experience at the 2002 World Cup as a center back, the drama surrounding Christian Pulisic last summer and electing to take a physical break from the Gold Cup when Mauricio Pochettino and his staff really couldn't understand why national team players would ever turn down the opportunity and the responsibility of representing their country. By that subtraction, I think there was multiplication, and guys like Tyler Adams and Chris Richards, Malik Tillman, those type of players to continue to develop without, the names of Tim Weah and Weston McKennie and Christian Pulisic and Yunus Musa and those type of players around, because I think there was a vacuum for an opportunity of leadership to start. And then with that sense of urgency from the opening game, listen, I think being a part of the Senegal and Germany broadcasts heading into the World Cup, we saw glimpses, and the biggest question was, could they put the performances completely together? They did so in match day 1 against Paraguay. They certainly did against the physicality and the one-trick pony that was Australia. And now tonight is an interesting test and a different test, because they lost to Turkey last summer in the first of 2 games, Turkey and Switzerland, heading into the Gold Cup. And now I think it's more about, there needs to be cockiness, there needs to be swagger, there needs to be confidence as well. And I think right now they're looking to maintain and probably raise the level of momentum that they've created so far in these 2 matches.
So let's get to tonight. And then, they've already won the group, so they're going to advance to the round of 32. It's the first time the U.S. men's national team has won the group since 2010. And Mauricio Pochettino said he's not risking anyone on yellows, nor should he. Pulisic is available. I wonder if we'll see him. Maybe just get him, some runs out there so he is fit and in form. Maybe you've seen an 11. I haven't. What are you expecting tonight as far as the lineup selections, and what should we hope to see from the U.S. men's national team tonight?
Yeah, I don't know. And I'm not trying to be dismissive or flippant to your question. The one thing I've figured out about Mauricio Pochettino is that nobody has him figured out. And whatever that conversation is with he and his coaching staff, they are going to fully believe that whatever they land on is the best decision for this match, either tactically or personnel-wise. Even, last time when we kind of heard that Christian Pulisic was questionable, we thought that it was going to be Sebastian Berhalter next to Tyler Adams, and then Malik Tillman pushes up a little bit higher. That wasn't the case. He went with, Ricardo Pepi and Flo Balogun as a 2-prong attack. You go all the way back to the game against Portugal in Atlanta. He started Christian as a number 9 by himself. So whatever the tactical nuance that he wants to approach this game, with a really disappointing start from Turkey in the first 2 matches, he will fully believe that this group and the team that he rolls out is not only fully capable of winning, but expected to win against Turkey. So again, when I say I don't know, it's not because I'm not trying to answer or I'm trying not to be wrong. The reality is that there's very few people that are within that silo of understanding what Mauricio and his coaching staff are trying to prepare for. And whatever he puts together, he's going to try to figure out what's the easiest, quickest, and most efficient way to get the 3 points, to continue to push up that goal differential, and make a statement for U.S. soccer to continue this evolution in this tournament.
So let's just talk about, generally speaking, what we could see. If we go off Pochettino's comments about players on yellows, that's Flo Balogun, Tyler Adams, Chris Richards, and Jedi Robinson. So we probably won't see those four. So generally speaking, a mix of some first-choice guys. I would imagine we see Turner in goal, not Freeze. And do we see Pulisic? Just best guess, even though we're both acknowledging we have no clue.
Yeah, I would say something around a substitution pattern and trying to integrate him. I mean, he's only got Christian 45 minutes in that first game. So whatever the level of comfort is for the medical staff will then allow Mauricio to pick and choose the timeline that he feels is respectable enough for him to step onto the field. Because, quite simply, that's what the U.S. fans want to see with the commercialization of Christian, the human being and the footballer. I don't know if he gives Matt Turner the opportunity. I don't think I would. I think I'd continue with Matt Freese regardless of who's in front of him, because you do take a risk. And in this risk, you also have to think about the timeline in between games. So you're roughly looking at guys that, quote unquote, you're going to rest somewhere between 10 to 12 days. So in terms of momentum, guys don't want to train, guys want to play. So just something to keep an eye on. I mean, listen, you could see an Austin Trusty across the back line. You could see a Joe Scally across the back line. You'll certainly see a Sebastian Berhalter in this mix. I would love to see a Gio Reyna get an opportunity. Does Max Darfson replace Jedi on that left-hand side? Does Tim Weah start instead of Serginho Dest? And Ricardo Pepi, is it worthy of giving Haji Wright a chance to get some minutes? So I would have said, had Christian Roldan not have been reported of dealing with a calf issue a couple of days ago, I would have thought that maybe he was due for a run in this group. But it's always an interesting conversation because these guys that aren't playing, they're not happy not playing. They might be good soldiers and they'll keep their head down and they'll do everything to the best of their ability to. And I had this conversation with Connor Cody last summer during the FIFA Club World Cup with him and Jordan Henderson, respectively, being involved in the Euros and the World Cups for Gareth Southgate and now currently Thomas Tuchel for Jordan Henderson. And their responsibility was to maintain a level of training habits that then when these disappointed players that weren't playing significant minutes or starting knew that they were not only capable of pushing the first group, but then absolutely prepared when they got their chance. So whoever steps on the field tonight is going to have earned their chance, not because of their name or their status, purely because of the competitiveness they've showed over these, last 5.5 weeks that they've been together on the training field and in practice.
Of all of the lineup selections and substitution patterns that Mauricio Pochettino has elected to go with so far, what's been the most surprising dynamic to you? Maybe a player playing more than you thought, or a player not getting as many minutes as you anticipated?
Yeah, I would say from a negative aspect, I'm really surprised at the lack of minutes for Tim Weah. I think highly of him. I think he's a phenomenal player. And maybe because he's almost a jack of all trades, you can play him in the pockets on the right or the left. You can play him under a striker. You can play him as a striker. You can play him as an outside back. He's so good in so many different positions. He's almost like Weston McKennie without the starting role. So he was a player. I'm still uniquely, what's the right word? I'm uniquely intrigued by the Gio Reyna situation, just because I think when he's on the field, he provides such a different element to the game. And then finally, let's see, who would be the other one? Yeah, I mean, I'm really bullish on those two players. Those are the two players I'm actually surprised we haven't seen more minutes from so far in this tournament.
I wonder what stands out most to you regarding the relationship between Mauricio Pochettino and Gio Reyna. There was a really good Substack written by a member of the soccer media who I didn't know, but it was sent over to me about how Mauricio Pochettino has really tried to kind of just take a much different approach with Gio, not coddle him because he's making him work, but, lost in the Greg Berhalter, Gio Reyna, Claudio Reyna, mom calling the U.S. men's national team office to let everyone know about an incident that happened 2 decades ago. It was this poor kid who was just caught in the middle. And Greg called him out in the media. And you know, that obviously affected Gio, and he was sulking. And Greg told everybody he was sulking. And part of that's on Gio for sure. But the way Pochettino has kind of handled that relationship, there was a really cool moment after Gio scored his goal where Pochettino just ran out on the field. It seems like he's got a special kind of place in his heart for this young man. Tell me what stands out to you.
Yeah, and by the way, throughout that whole story, and there's plenty of reference points to any story going all the way back when it was broke in The Athletic, that conversation that Greg Berhalter had, he never publicly spoke about it. It was in a private setting that was not supposed to be made public.
Oh,
that was made public.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, no, it goes. It's like the aligning of the stars for all the wrong reasons aligned on that day. Anyways, listen. The reality is that Gio's 4 years on. He's more mature. He's married, and he has a baby on the way. You know, for us is, you go back to us being knuckleheads, Spence, when we were 19 years old versus, 23. That's a lot of individual growth. And there's a lot of mistakes made, and there's a lot of learning moments. And I think in probably maybe a private moment, Gio would acknowledge the frustration of the way that he was not used during the World Cup. And then on top of that, probably, a bigger conversation about, what he learned subsequently from the attitude shown that got him into whatever situation with Greg Berhalter. I was in the 2 games between Paraguay and Uruguay in Philadelphia and Tampa, respectively, for Turner covering. And I can tell you 2 things can be true at the same time. Number one, Gio was called into the very first camp, and I believe it was Panama in Austin, if I'm not mistaken. And that was Mauricio's first camp. And when I asked him, who were you most impressed with? He said Gio. But Gio had been sent home because Gio had picked up an injury. And he said, that kid's a special player. Now, remember, both from Argentinian backgrounds. On top of that Paraguay and Uruguay game, he was outstanding. And that was at the time when Christian Pulisic had picked up an injury and wasn't playing for AC Milan and was on his way back. So he wasn't with the U.S. men's national team. So in all of these moments when Gio was really shining, it was because he had the keys to the Ferrari. And what we had heard from Mauricio Pochettino was a very standard, the guy's got to be playing at a high level, they've got to be playing significant minutes, and if they're in attacking phase of play positions, we need goals and assists, we need goal contributions. And Gio was the only one that was almost not held to that public standard. And I think it was because Mauricio recognized that he's, in a lot of ways, a unicorn. And by that, I don't mean he's necessarily the best player on the field, but he could do things that Christian couldn't do, that Weston couldn't do, that Malik Tillman couldn't do, that Zendejas couldn't do, that even Diego Luna couldn't do. He's just a different player with the way that he sits in pockets, he sits in seams, and he kind of runs, for the soccer fans listening, he kind of runs like Paul Pogba. He's kind of got that like baby giraffe gait where he kind of just glides, and you don't realize how quick and you don't realize how fast he is. But technically, he's able to do special things, and I think that Trivela that he scored with the outside of his right foot, put the game to bed and at SoFi in the very first game of the World Cup against Paraguay. He showed those are the moments of magic that he's capable of showing, despite what has been a complete disaster in terms of consistency and health for either Borussia Dortmund or Borussia Mönchengladbach for the better part of the last couple of years. I believe the game that he started was either Senegal or Germany. I can't remember off the top of my head. That was only his 30th start since Qatar. 30th start in 3.5 years. So it just goes to show how difficult it's been in terms of finding a fitness level, all of these little knick-knack injuries that unfortunately has taken away a good chunk of one of our best players in the U.S. system.
If I asked you, and the answer to start the tournament was probably Christian, but we haven't seen much of him, the most important player on this team, And I held you.
Weston McKennie.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Weston McKennie.
Okay. Elaborate.
Yeah, no doubt. Weston McKennie. I just think that while Christian understandably is the focus, of this generation, of this golden generation of players that we've referred to time and time again, and he's going to be the face and he's going to be Captain America. I think Weston McKennie is a jack of all trades. His intelligence with the way that he plays the position, his player profile. I know everyone constantly has kind of judged him based on their perception of his body. And Igor Tudor, former Juve coach, former quick pit stop at your Tottenham Hotspur before De Zerbi came in, had a really important conversation with him probably a calendar year ago that really influenced his off-the-field dynamic in terms of physicality and dynamism, but also kind of the dietary focus. I just think he's – listen, I'm very bullish on the role of Chris Richards, of Tyler Adams, and Weston McKennie, because while all of the other conversations are about other players and what they're capable of doing, I think in particular those three are the heart and soul of this group. And I mean that with all due respect. I think they're inspirational leaders. They're dogs. Like they are dogs. They're ready to fight at any moment and fight within the correct temperament that's needed to be shown. But yeah, I think a lot more goes through Weston McKennie than he gets credit for. And I think this World Cup, I think the world is starting to truly understand what he's capable of, what Tyler Adams is capable of, and what Chris Richards is capable of. And I think a byproduct of that is because this group learned how to win and play without Christian Pulisic because of last summer and because in the fall of his injuries. And I think a lot of that has to do with these three guys recalibrating the belief within the group that, God forbid, if Christian isn't available, like we saw in the second half against Paraguay and the game against Australia, that the U.S. is still more than capable of playing differently, but still being able to win and dominate.
All right, Dunny, before I set you loose, it does look like Bosnia, according to the athletics model, 99% chance that Bosnia is going to be the matchup in the round of 32. And then we just don't know what it's going to look like from there. There's a potential for Egypt. And, of course, they have maybe one of the world's best players. Some of the expectations are starting to get a little wild here, but we are Americans. We want to believe that we can do anything, even win a World Cup. How big are you allowing your imagination to get about what this team could do the rest of the way?
I was sitting with my group last night at the bar after we got done with our game, our South Africa Korea Republic game, and I pulled up the projections of what this looked like. And there's no reason to not believe that this group, at a bare minimum, can get to the quarterfinals. You are avoiding some of the big dogs. Now, as I say that, it's important for us to acknowledge that in a must-win final game in Bosnia and Herzegovina, that they beat Italy and knocked Italy out of contention to play in the World Cup and took their spot against Canada up in Toronto. But as I say that, my little sister and her husband are in Bosnia right now, sending me videos of the celebratory moments last night during the game and how excited they are to get the opportunity to play the United States. So, yes, listen, there's challenges and there's unique dynamics in every game. But to be in the situation, again, for example, the round of 32 game that I'll have here in Monterey is going to be Netherlands against Morocco. The next game after that in the round of 16 is going to be Germany against France. So for the U.S. to have Bosnia and Herzegovina and then potentially play Egypt in the next round, things are lining up. There's a little sprinkle of some special sauce that's happening around this team. But again, it's all for naught in terms of the momentum, because right now the perception is that this team is going to be capable of doing the spectacular, but they have a lot of work to do in the meantime.
All right, my friend. Well, I appreciate the time. Enjoy this experience, man. It's such a fun tournament. I always forget, then it comes back. I'm like, man, this is so cool. So it must be great to be a part of it. I appreciate your time. Travel safe, okay?
Yeah, my man. It's the first time I've ever got to be a part of World Cup coverage, and I'm a kid in a candy shop, Spence. What an incredible experience this has been. So Appreciate you, and see you in a couple weeks' time.
Brian Dunseth, my co-host on Talkin' Real. We do it every Thursday on KMYU. You can see it at 10:35 tonight. Pablo Mastroeni, the head coach of RSL, is my guest. Turkey and the United States begins at 8 o'clock local time on Fox. The U.S. has already advanced out of the group and won the group. We'll see what sort of lineup selections we have from Mauricio Pochettino. He has already said that he is not going to be playing the players that are on yellow cards. So that includes Flo Balogun, includes Tyler Adams, a couple of others, I believe. Oh, Jedi Robinson is on a red card, and so is Chris Richards. So 4 typical starters in the 11 will not see action tonight. We'll keep you up to date on the World Cup matches going on. There are a few going on right now. The World of the PGA Tour is at the Travelers Championship in Cromwell, Connecticut at TPC River Highlands, where Eric Cole carded a 63. He's your leader in the clubhouse. Ben Griffin is at 6 under. So is Matt Fitzpatrick, Bud Cauley, Corey Connors at 6 under par. Patrick Cantlay, Brandt Snedeker, Aaron Ray, Justin Rose, and Scotty Scheffler 5 under. Scotty's through 14, so he's 5 under through 14. So he's having himself a day. And that's your PGA Tour leaderboard update. It's brought to you by our friends at Uinta Golf. Uinta Golf by Worldwide Golf. Visit in-store for a free custom fitting at Uinta Golf or shop online at worldwidegolf.com. Uinta Golf, get there. All right, coming up next, we'll get back to some jazz stuff, some draft stuff. JP, John Paul Chunga from the Utah Jazz Podcast Network, former producer of this radio show, will join us. Going to do some Utes today, some Utah athletic updates with Jason Batacchio from the Salt Lake Tribune. Kurt Schmidt will join us. We have Sports Court. 1 hour down, 3 hours to go. Busy Thursday show. Keep it right here on ESPN 700. We are back, episode 12, Reality Check with Spence Checketts. I want to remind you, we record this. Well, this week we are recording it on Thursday. It's televised, Friday nights on KMYU and KJazz TV, and then, of course, streaming on ESPN 700. It's a historic week for the Utah Jazz. We hope it is. We'll look back in maybe a decade or so, and only time will tell. As with the number 2 overall pick, the Utah Jazz selected Darren Peterson out of Kansas. Our next guest is with the Utah Jazz Podcast Network. He's been all over the place with the Jazz draft coverage. My old producer, JP, John Paul Chunga. JP Chunga, how are you, bud?
I'm great. Thank you for inviting me.
No, I appreciate you taking the time. And I know you've been super busy because it has been a really historic, special week. We're going to talk Darren in a moment. But what I like to do with this space is kind of let the community learn about the people that make up our sports ecosystem. And you're a pretty unique case here in our state. Very well educated, as you like to remind people. Syracuse, Newhouse, stand up. So you've been doing this now for a number of years. You're no longer new on the scene. My question is, when did you first realize that you wanted to do what you're doing now?
I think it was pretty early. I always thought that it was crazy that people were paid to talk about sports as an actual job.
Yep.
You watch any show and there are people opining after the game, and that you can actually be paid American currency was crazy to me.
Yeah.
And then basketball in this town is absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
You go into the Delta Center, you realize that the most famous basketball game ever, Jordan's Game 6, was played in this building.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, by the way, the flu game was also played here.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, by the way, the most highly rated NBA finals were here.
Yeah.
And one of the great voices was Hot Rod Huntley.
Yep.
And I listened to him and I thought, that is amazing that this could be somebody's job. And so I said, all right, pretty early, like around 10.
Around 10 years old.
I thought I was going to do this, and I followed through.
Were you one that would like watch the game and like call the game like either in your head or like out loud?
Did I annoy many a friend by commentating a FIFA battle? Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
Did I annoy people when we were playing pickup, commentating my own games as a soccer player? Yeah, I would do that.
Love it.
Because it's sort of a muscle that you can't turn off when you're out there. And it's fueled by that passion that you end up where you end up.
So realizing early on that you wanted this to be your route, how intentional were you with your education? Because I say tongue in cheek that you're very well educated, but you literally went to, I'll just say it, the best broadcasting school in America. It's at Syracuse.
Well, it's number one for a reason. But the reason I went was pretty much happenstance. I visited on a beautiful spring day. It was 70 degrees. Everybody was out in the quad.
Yeah.
The hacky sack was out. It was the true.
The sack was being hacky.
It was true what you think as a stereotype what college life would be like.
Yeah.
And then I realized once you go there, it's going to be snowing 400 inches over 4 years.
Yep.
But that toughens you up and builds the muscle of, oh yeah, that's right. Why am I going here? To get to the end goal of being a sports broadcaster. Yeah. The end goal being, yeah, I'm waking up at 5:30 a.m. to do practice sportscasts just to prove to older upperclassmen that I'm cut out for this. Trudging across campus in the snow, it kind of sorts you out. Yeah. And you realize, am I built for this? Do I want to do this? Or would I rather do other things? And I chose to keep going. So give our listeners some context. Give me some Syracuse names so people really understand, like when I say what a powerhouse that journalism school is, give us some context, both past and maybe some kids that you were there with. Look, it's wild when your first orientation is in the Mike Tirico room at Newhouse. Yep. And then you're being shuttled off to the Bob Costas auditorium and you're going to the Marv Albert room. All these names of sports history, so many great sports broadcasters that are from there. The people who you meet along the way, like one of my classmates being Noah Eagle, great friend, and his dad's Ian Eagle, who is the best basketball play-by-play man running. Yeah. You realize this is a pretty cool place to be. For sure. You're going to meet a lot of really cool people, and hopefully everybody rising tides lifts all boats. What was your first job out of college? How did you get started? First job out of college was being a radio producer for 1320. Okay. K-Fan.
K-Fan back in the day.
Back in the day. And grinding my way through that, booking guests, doing the same thing that I did for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And JP and I became familiar when I took over the afternoon drive almost 8 years ago. It'll be 8 years ago in August. We worked together for a few months, and I can remember coming home and telling my wife at the time, he's not going to be around very long. He's too good. He's too good to be doing this. And sure enough, within a few months, you had moved over to the Utah Jazz, where you're at now. So before we get into the draft, kind of help our listeners understand, because you wear a lot of hats for the Jazz. So tell us all the things you kind of have been doing for the Jazz and what you have going on currently.
I mean, it is a credit to you that it's been 8 years, because I remember the first conversation that I had with you was, have you ever done solo radio before?
For 4 hours.
So now you've done it for 8 years.
And at the time, I had not done it.
That's crazy.
The look in your eyes were like, are we really going to be able to make this work?
And we did.
And we did. Thank you.
For the 2 months.
Indeed.
But when I came over to the Jazz, the intention was to start up a podcast for the team, give a way to speak to fans, allow them to hear from the voices, whether it was a general manager or it was a coach, a player, somebody, to get those access points. And then now, as it has evolved, you get more and more responsibility. You get to do different projects, whether they're long form storytelling. Some of the most gratifying work that I've been able to do has been the historical stuff, because that's so important to know that this franchise has been around for 45 plus years in Utah, 50 plus overall. People care about it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
It harkens back to one of my great passions, which is soccer. Like, Liverpool has hundreds of years of history.
Right. Yeah.
And you realize this is half that life. People care about this, and they want to know about who were the early stars, who were the early coaches, what was the team with heart in 1984 like. That was the first one that went to the playoffs, when this was the longest tenured franchise to not go to the postseason at that point. There were real droughts in the early years, and the fact that it's still around is cool, and the community is absolutely bought in and supported.
Yeah, the team with heart. Woody Page at the time with the Denver Post wrote a piece, "The Jazz have no heart," and the Jazz were playing the Nuggets was it a playoff matchup? Yeah, that's right.
First round playoff series.
And Frank used the column to motivate not just the players but the entire community. Like, you don't think we have heart? You know, that was a Laydenism. Yeah,
he gave people who were part of that team purple heart rings.
That's right.
That they still have.
Yeah, that's so cool.
And those totems, those things, when you're questioning a team's heart, how easy is that for Frank to use his bulletin board material? They win that series. They go to play the Phoenix Suns in the second round, but that's the start of things. That's the start of winning, where they wouldn't be out of the playoffs for 20 years.
Right.
It's crazy.
And it's really cool that you were able to do the historical stuff prior to Frank's passing, because you were able to spend time with him. And over the past 4 or 5 years, we've said goodbye to Jerry. We've said goodbye to Frank, and some others as well. Gary Briggs, a lot of the members of the older Jazz generations have passed on. What was it like for you to really get some of the final access to Frank Layden before he passed away?
These are cartoons.
Yeah.
Same thing that I felt at Syracuse. I didn't think that I would be around Bob Costas or Mike Tirico or Ian Eagle. These are just people. And then you meet them and you realize there's something there. There's a reason why they have this magnetism, why Frank put the entire franchise on his back in those early years and became a mascot for the team. Mm-hmm. How many head coaches would go out and sit next to Marv Albert and just do bloopers for a video?
Yeah.
How much he means to NBA fans, this entire community, how embedded he was in it. It was really cool to let him tell his story, and frankly remarkable on my end how much he was able to remember and just spout off, because that's where you see Frank Layden in 1984, why you would run through a wall for this type of person.
It was interesting. After his passing, I did 2 straight shows, just getting everybody I could, not just his son, Scott, or people that coached with him, but people that worked for the Jazz in every single department. And Grant Harrison, who was in promotions for the Jazz for a number of years and ran game night stuff, said that Frank used to attend their weekly promotion meetings on Fridays. He was the head coach. he was the general manager, and Grant's promotion, Frank would walk in because he wanted to know what they were doing. I mean, he really had his hands in every part of the organization. It's pretty wild.
And I'm sure he had a rubber chicken under his arm.
Absolutely, no doubt. All right. You've been with the Jazz long enough now to see a transfer of ownership, a coaching change, an entire roster overhaul. So before we get to Darren Peterson and the draft, what has stood out most to you as you watched the Miller to Smith transition, you watched the Quinn to Will transition, and then Donovan, Rudy, that entire team is gone. And watching this 4-year rebuild that now is going to lead to some serious competition. What's it been like to watch the culture put in place?
It's a long road, and everybody knew that going into it, when you're making a move off of those players, there's a different way to build, draft, trade, free agency, how you can make moves in the NBA with new rules coming into the league. But the transition has been something that everybody thinks about as not just going to be built in a day. It's going to take some steps along the way. And that pivot away from Rudy and Donovan, the hiring of Will Hardy, infusing the players with a young head coach and giving him a contract extension by saying, all right, we're validating you as somebody that knows that this is going to be a long build. And look, it's taken time, but this is the moment. These are the times that you build towards where you're pushing the chips in. You make a trade for Jaren Jackson Jr. You can see exactly why the front office and the coaches are so excited about this team.
I want to ask you about Ryan and Ashley. I watched the interview you did with them after the draft. Excellent work as always. And Ryan's a really interesting guy because he's essentially, we're about the same age. He's like living out the dream that all of us would have loved to have, to buy the team that we cheered for as a kid. His moniker seems to be consistently, this is for Utah. Utah shows up. We're doing this for the community. And as I'm watching the cluster that's going on in Portland with their new owner and Tom Dundon and the way he's handling things, I think Jazz fans should be pretty grateful that they have an owner and an ownership group that's committed to the community, committed to the staff. And as you referenced with Will Hardy, 2 separate contract extensions. Mike Honore just signed a 1-year deal with incentives. So comparison is the thief of joy. I get it, but you know these people, you're with them often. What should we know about Ryan and Ashley in the group?
I think the thing about Ryan and Ashley that you should know is the origin story about how Ryan was up for the Minnesota Timberwolves. He tells the story about going down the road there, and Ashley says, would we still be able to keep our Jazz tickets if you're the owner of the Minnesota Timberwolves?
Yeah.
And he said, no. And knowing how all in that he would go in to that opportunity, he knew that relationship with the team would be taken away.
Yeah.
So he pulls back. And then by some miracle, the Jazz are being allowed to be sold, and it goes to someone who has sweat equity in being a fan, knows the trials and tribulations of being a fan, and that being the core message of going all in on the Utah Jazz as a fan. You see it in the way that he moves. You see it in the way that they're going to build up the Delta Center with renovations, building new practice facilities down at Southtown Mall. He's doing it because it is a community asset. It would be very easy to not have a draft party on a 90-degree day, but he did. Yeah. And people showed up, and it's because people really care about this team.
Yeah, no, for sure. The energy, I don't know what it is. Oftentimes, success in life, you need a little luck for sure. But whether it's randomly, the Arizona Coyotes suddenly are available. So, okay, go ahead and move here. Now we have the Utah Mammoth. Or as you've referenced, like the timing of the Jazz sale. And now the Jazz for the first time have lucked into a little, opportunity to add a really, really good piece at number 2. And there is a lot of luck involved, but there's something like unexplainable going on that seems to be falling into place. It takes time, as you referenced. It's been 4 years of frustration for the fans waiting for some winning basketball. But there's some sort of metaphysical thing that feels like going on that now, like everything is falling into place. And here we go. So that leads us to Darren Peterson at 2. Some people think he's the best player in this draft. Only time will tell. You know the deal. But I'm excited. I mean, there's a case to be made that this is the most talented player the Jazz have ever drafted on draft night. No one knew Carl was going to be Carl. He was the 13th pick, or John at 16, or Donovan
13, Rudy 27. Like number 2 overall pick, Darren Peterson. What do you think it means for the team, and how excited are you to watch this kid grow?
This doesn't happen here.
No, it doesn't.
The second pick
It has never happened.
Okay,
not like this.
They don't move up in the lottery. They have never moved up in the lottery until this season, and the fact that they get the number 2 pick. Last time it was, an entirely different structure where you're doing coin tosses for the 1 and 2 pick. There wasn't even a lottery with Darrell Griffith. But Austin Ainge said it the day that it happened. You could see the excitement that he had on that moment. He fits alongside Keontae George. That was the thing that Will Hardy told me on draft night, that he's a complete player, that he can show defensive chops as well. They're very high on Darren Peterson, and pretty predictably people are as well.
It's interesting to hear multiple people talk about the fit with Keontae, because look, this will be Will's job and no one knows what it's going to look like. I kind of feel like Keontae would be perfect off the bench, like 18, 20, more than that, 25, 27 minutes, get you 17, 18 points. Because Darren Peterson, to me, is a primary ball handler, and I think that's the message he's given to people. I just have this vision of like Darren and Ace and Lowry and Jaren Jackson Jr. and Walker and a massive starting 5 and enough shooting and the ability to switch and guard multiple positions, because so many teams in the league have so many big guards. It will be Will Hardy's call, of course, but I've been surprised to hear about Darren himself talk about the fit with Keontae, those 2 in the backcourt. Do you think that's how it's going to play out?
Well, and Will said that he fits with Keontae, he fits with Walker, he fits with Jaren, he fits with Lowry. He just fits, and let the basketball and the talent bear out. The decisions will come with him, but they have the full backing of Will Hardy to figure it out because of the pedigree, the Spurs lineage that he has with Greg Popovich, and knowing that the regular season, things will be sorted out once you get out there and have the ball out.
What's the excitement level like around the organization? Because, down the stretch last year, as you know, I go to most games, but down the stretch last year, I made it a point to get to the final few just to kind of talk to people, see how things were going. And everybody was already looking forward to this year. And I think this year has kind of been circled maybe for 2 or 3 as like, okay, we got some work to do. It's a tough thing to do, to break down a team in pro basketball and then rebuild it up brick by brick. You absolutely need luck, because a lot of people talk about the Spurs model organization. And yes, for sure, David Robinson, Tim Duncan, Victor Wembanyama, number 1 picks. Cleveland, LeBron, Orlando, Shaq, and Hardaway back in the day. Like, there's no such thing as an organization in the NBA that's won without a little bit of lady luck, and the Jazz just have never had it. So now that the final piece of the puzzle is in place-ish, I mean, there's still some mechanisms to add talent. Can you feel the energy and the juice around the building as far as looking forward to next season already?
Sure. You go around anywhere here and people are talking about the Jazz. It's the middle of the summer.
Yeah.
No basketball games are being played.
Right.
And they're already looking forward to Summer League. But I think they understand that this is going to be the first point in trying to show a long-term winner, in trying to make this sustained winning, because ultimately everything's cool on paper. You have to actually play the games, but they know that they have a really high level of talent out there, and it's just about stacking even more good decisions as it continues.
What stands out most to you about Will, getting to know him the way that you have? Because the walking line has always been really good young coach. You referenced the pedigree, came up under Greg Popovich. He's coached with Team USA with Steve Kerr and Jeff Van Gundy and the legends of the profession. Steve himself said the Jazz hired a star when they hired Will Hardy. But the fact of the matter is they haven't won a lot of games, and they've been the worst defensive team in basketball for the past 2 years. Now, we all know why. Okay, so I'm not drawing a line between Will and the issues, because there's no such thing as a great coach without great players. But after getting to know him over the past few years, now that he will be allowed to put his best foot forward this year, what should Jazz fans know about this coach?
Well, I think that they've shown it through the contract extensions, how much of a backing that Danny Ainge, Austin Ainge, Justin Zanuck, the alignment of ownership to front office to coach is behind the talents that he has. And he's absolutely a part of it. Seeing the development stories from the players, how much they buy into what Will Hardy does, how much coaching has into development stories for Keontae George, for players who, if they want to get better, this is the guy that can help them out. And Will's absolutely a part of it in all of these players' journeys. And now Darren Peterson, Ace Bailey will be the next newest players to be a part of it.
Yeah, it's exciting to consider not just what it looks like next year, but what it looks like 3 to 5 years from now, because there's so many good young teams in the league, not just in the West, but league wide. So this year I think is going to be a lot of fun. But 3 to 5 years, if you're willing to be patient and project that out, that's kind of a window we can look at where I think they're going to be able to throw punches with any team in the league, because it does need some space to develop. It's hard to go from San Antonio did it, but of course, Wembanyama is Wembanyama. It's really hard to go from culturally a team that isn't necessarily putting their best foot forward every night to suddenly going all in. I mean, it is probably going to take a few years to establish what it's like to just win on a nightly basis.
The pressure is different.
Yeah.
The pressure is absolutely going to be different than what it has been the last couple of years, but that's why you play the games.
Yep.
That's why it's competitive. That's why these players go out there and do these things. It's for these moments. They want to show themselves. And there is a lot of confidence in what they've built so far and the necessary moves that they have to do to make sure that they get over the hump. But they know it's not a short process. This is about long, sustained success. And that is something that they're looking forward to. And
you referenced the fans. It's been interesting, not surprising. Jazz fans are awesome. They always have been.
Crazy, in the best way.
Absolutely.
Crazy.
No, 100%. I mean, even like throughout the course of the past few years, I'll be home on like a random Wednesday after the show or something, and I'll get a text from a buddy like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm watching the Jazz game." And he's like, "They're down 30." I'm like, "I know, but I watch the Jazz. That's what we do. We watch the Jazz. If you live in Utah and you're a sports fan, you just watch the Jazz." The building has been not just full, but engaged, even when nights have kind of manifested that aren't necessarily all that exciting. What do you make of the fan base?
200 plus sellouts that they've been able to have.
Yeah.
I don't get it.
Yeah.
The passion of the community, it's always basketball season. Summer League's coming up, and with the extra interest of having high picks here for Summer League, I know that will be filled. When my first introduction on the job is Summer League, really, that hooks me into what this job is all about. The fact that all these teams are coming here for a exhibition and the building is filled.
Yep.
That's all you need to know about what basketball means to this community. They love it.
Real quick, last thing, then we'll set you loose, because you have a additional obligation and responsibility in your life as the play-by-play voice of the Utah Royals. So, from a soccer standpoint, the World Cup's going on right now. Soccer fans will tell you we don't really need our growth. We're good with what we are. If you own a team, you would prefer to see the business grow a little bit. What do you think the World Cup can bring as far as interest for the game here domestically?
It's awesome. It's
so fun.
It's so fun.
So cool
to see the best players in the world be around and show their talents. Lionel Messi playing in MLS. How many people thought that would be something to happen? But seeing the highest quality of players perform in Sandy, Utah, that's the other thing that got me into sports.
Yeah.
And it doesn't go unnoticed by myself that these are world-class athletes operating at the top of their game. It's really cool.
If you could pick one bucket list career dream that you have, is it calling a World Cup game? Is it calling an NBA? What do you want to do if you could do one thing in your career before it's said and done?
Call the next game.
Look at that.
I know that's not the answer you're looking for.
No, I understand.
But you have to treat every game like it's the Super Bowl.
Fair enough. Good to see you, buddy.
Good to see you.
Where can people go find the pod?
Utah Jazz Podcast Network, anywhere you get your podcast. Apple, Spotify, Google, anywhere you get them, Utah Jazz Podcast Network.
Best Jazz podcast. My friend JP Chunga will catch a break and tell you what's coming up next on the other side.
University of Utah has a new apparel partner. It is Adidas. The long-rumored partnership became official. Our next guest has been a busy boy. Caught up with him a few weeks back as we said goodbye to our buddy Kevin Reynolds, but my friend Jason Bataki from the Salt Lake Tribune on a Thursday. What's up, dude? How are you?
Nothing much, man. How are you?
I'm well.
Just, back on the grind. I had a little vacation these last 2 weeks and came back this week. So nothing too crazy.
Did you leave your house and do something fun, or were you on the sticks playing whatever World of Warcraft or whatever it is these days?
No, I definitely left my house. I had a wedding to go to in Fort Worth. Went to Billy Bob's. If you've ever been to the Stockyards in Fort Worth, it's a good time. There's a lot of people from Netherlands in Fort Worth just because of the World Cup. So
okay,
had a good time with some people all across the world. Did some two-stepping, I think that's what they call it, and yeah, it was a good time. Then went home and saw some family, so nothing too crazy. But yep, we're back in Salt Lake now and back on the grind per usual, ready for some Big 12 media days and football to start soon. I think we're 70 days out officially from the season. So
that is correct.
Stuff.
I need a video of Jason Bataki two-stepping, just so you know. Is there one that exists?
No.
Okay.
It was a very short-lived experience.
Okay.
I was more so just having a few beers and having a good time.
Okay, there it is.
We stepped on the dance floor for probably 5 minutes, but it was a short-lived experience for sure.
Attaboy. All right, let's dig into some of these projects you've been working on lately. We had Mark Harlan in studio a couple of weeks ago and talked about a lot of the things that you've been reporting. Let's start with the private equity deal with Ocho Capital. It is signed. Jason, the one question that no one seems to get an answer to is what exactly the numbers are. How much money is actually being infused? What percentage of the company does Utah own? What percentage of the company does Ocho Capital own? I've heard rumors, not enough that I'm comfortable to talk on air about, but what's your understanding of the actual numbers, even though the deal has been signed?
Yeah, I've kind of been in a similar position. It's been a lot of hush hush from the U and just folks, kind of involved with the deal as expected. But I've heard numbers, regarding 125 million to 150 million, but obviously nothing that's confirmed as of sorts, or I would have reported it. But yeah, I think that's the kind of big question that fans are kind of waiting on to see, okay, how much of this infusion of cash is it actually going to be? What is the equity stake? I've heard different things. More recently, I heard 51-49. But again, that's not confirmed, so don't quote me on that. And so, there's still a lot of things in the air in regards to, just what this deal looks like, how they're going to use the infusion of cash, what it means for fans and ticket prices. I think I had heard Mark say that there was going to be roughly 60 employees at this company. How many people were laid off, how many people aren't going to have their jobs, and that number still hasn't been confirmed either. And so, I've been actively, checking in with people and, working my sources as any good reporter is. And, hopefully those numbers come to light eventually once the deal goes into effect on July 1. I think the fans deserve that level of transparency, especially with a deal of this magnitude. And so, but again, the numbers that I just said are speculation. At this current moment, nothing has been confirmed, and I feel like it'd be irresponsible to say that is the confirmed numbers on air. So yeah, but that's kind of what I've heard. I don't know if it's similar for you as well.
Okay, so just to follow up, and again, we're not reporting anything, but $125 million of capital is a lot less than $500 million of capital, and a 51% ownership stake for Utah and 49% Ocho Capital is a lot less than the 66-33% that I believe Yahoo cited a few weeks ago. I mean, again, I don't know what's real and what isn't, but those speculative numbers seem to be a lot different than what most of us are understanding right now.
Yeah, I mean, I've also heard the 66-33%, total too. So it's like, I think there's got to be a certain level of transparency at some point. I get this deal is complex. I get that there's a lot of moving parts, but I think the fans and just donors and people that are associated with the program kind of deserve to know, what that looks like. Even taxpayers, I mean, it is much different than, the previously reported 500 million total that was out there. And I think there's a lot that goes into that. I know that they were going to have a big donor piece, associated with the deal. I don't know if that's fallen off or not, but that, they were going to go to a lot of the donor families or just donors that they have and offer up a quote unquote preferred stock to said donors as part of this company. There was, things other related to like a state bond potentially being involved with it. But again, none of that's confirmed. So it's kind of just hearsay at this point. And so, there's a lot of things that I've heard. I would have reported on it if it was, confirmed by officials or confirmed by the sources that I have. But there's a lot of moving parts. And there was a lot of moving parts in the 6 months after the deal was, initially approved. I think that's why there's such a variance of numbers, kind of going around. And obviously, I'm sure Mark Harlan and Patrick Nolan and the individuals involved with Otro know what those numbers are. But, I think that at some point there's going to have to be a level of transparency, whether it comes from the state or, individuals like me that are journalists and reporting on the news actively. And so, that's kind of all I have to say on that matter. I think it isn't a really interesting space because it's, nobody really knows how the money is going to be used other than, funding the revenue sharing. Is it going to be, to pay down deficit payments? Is it going to, help boost their NIL? And I don't think that they've necessarily said that up front, as clear as maybe fans have wanted them to be. And so, I'm really interested to see what happens when the numbers do come out, and what they actually are, because it's an interesting thing right now, and I'm sure you would have a similar opinion. But again, that's just my feelings and opinions on it, and my opinions don't matter because I'm a unbiased reporter. So yeah.
What about tenure, length of deal? Obviously the money is what most people are interested in, but
Right.
There's got to be an exit at some point. I don't know if it's 5 years. I don't know if it's 8 years. Do you have any idea what the tenure of the contract looks like and sounds like with the deal?
I do not. I have heard 5. I have heard 7, kind of in that range, as you just mentioned. But again, I have not heard that. And so I think, again, that goes back to the transparency stuff. People want to know these details. Fans want to know the details. I want to know the details as a reporter. And I think even, the state auditor, I mean, in that letter she sent to the, university and the board of trustees, the President Taylor Randall, and all of those things, like she's essentially asking for transparency to be had on this deal. And I think people are kind of just watching and waiting to see how it all will turn out. Cause I can't speculate or say I know what the tenure of the deal is. I've heard things, but again, I would feel inappropriate saying it on air as reported facts. So yeah.
Let's move over to a dynamic you had alluded to a few minutes ago, which was the University of Utah Athletic Department begins, quote, unsettling layoff process as part of the private equity deal. Mark did address this on the show, and it's well known now that, the positions are going to be eliminated in the athletic department, but some, I don't know how many, will be kind of moved over into Crimson Brand Partners. So it was the way it was described to me is like logistically we had to do this because we're moving jobs over to this new entity. Again, It's the numbers, right? How many people are losing their jobs? How many people will be rehired? What are your thoughts there?
I know that they have already kind of been in the process of hiring some of the, what people might say an executive team or some of the higher level, individuals from the U and kind of moving them over. And hiring them officially. But to my knowledge, I think there's going to be a few folks that aren't rehired. I really wonder what that looks like. Is there going to be severance packages paid out to those folks? How many are there? Because you think about the nitty gritty of all these things. I mean, those are individuals that are essentially losing their tenure, which is, massive for state employees. They're losing state benefits if they're not getting their jobs back. And I would assume, and I'm fairly certain actually, that the U will actively help, from what I've heard, actively help those individuals, get relocated to new jobs. And so, that process is ongoing, but nobody really knows the number. When I had a source reach out to me about the email that Mark had sent to staff and just the beginning of the layoffs process, one person had told me that the number was potentially in the hundreds. And so if, and again, that's not confirmed, or that's not, from anything that I've had confirmed by any officials. It's just, again, stuff that I'm hearing and could be hearsay. I just want to make that very clear. If they do have 60 employees and there was, 100 at the baseline, that's potentially 40 employees that are losing their jobs. I think that number might be high if I were speculating, but, again, I think people are asking for transparency on that aspect as well, and so, it's kind of a watch and wait. I think a lot of people are being quiet at the moment because they're currently in the job, relocation process. They're kind of watching and waiting to see if they will be rehired. But I think post July 1, once all of this is finalized and the company is kind of set in motion, we'll all get a better understanding of who lost their jobs, how many, people that is, and et cetera, et cetera. So definitely a story that I'm keeping up with for sure. And I apologize for not having, as accurate details as I'm sure the audience would like. So, yeah. All
good. You'll get there. You've been doing some good work. And ultimately, I know that, it's not your job to make friends. It's your job to be a reporter and also do grown-up journalism, and that's what the Salt Lake Tribune is about. And you were also able to get your hands on some documents. I'm sure folks weren't overly thrilled with this, but the U paid Intelligent Insights $30K to review the external-facing units of the athletic department. And not great, Bob, as far as some of the things that were revealed. And I also asked Mark about this when he joined us. Look, the point of doing this is to find ways to get better. So, obviously there's that. But what were your main takeaways? It didn't sound like some of the employees that were interviewed in the process weren't necessarily thrilled with the current state of things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, I don't necessarily have my own personal takeaways. I think it would be unfair to have my own opinion about a document that is just straight factual basis based off of people that are inside of the athletic department. So I'm going to, kind of let that stand for what it is. But I do think, reading the document, going through it, it's, a 28-page document with, a quote addendum of people, saying that there's tons of, issues from what they felt like, the athletic department. And I think, I think it also kind of tells the story of, athletic departments as a whole in the current climate. There's a lot of chaos. There's, bills to be paid. The House settlement has changed so much, and everybody's, fighting and scrapping to, not internally, but fighting and scrapping to, get every dollar that they can. And so, to use a big campus, there's a lot of, before the private equity deal, there was a lot of unconsolidated parts of the athletic department. There's also auxiliary services, which, dealt with a lot of facilities things. And so, I think that they're trying to address some of those issues with the private equity deal, as Mark had said, but I'm not going to say I have an opinion because I don't. This is going to sound real coach speak of me, or maybe journalist speak, but, I think it's very important to allow the facts, be the facts and repair it and or report it in a fair fashion and just do, my due diligence to kind of present it to my audience as the best as I can. And so, I do definitely think that, if it is fair to say that, some people are upset about, the way the athletic department was being ran at that time. But I don't think it's exclusive to just Utah. Certainly there are things inside of that document that were telling to maybe the fan or just people, that don't know what's happening with Utah athletics. But again, there's also, it's pretty standard for businesses and athletic departments and, even universities to hire auditing companies. And that's not the only one that the U has done, to my knowledge. There's been plenty that have been done over the last several years, not just that. And so it's a natural thing that happens in college athletics. And, I again, just let the document stand and, let it be what it is. I don't have really any opinion on it. I sound like a politician right now. I'm so sorry.
Vote for Jason Batacchio, kids. That's what I have to say.
I am not. No. I would never run for office. I am a journalist. No votes to be cast here.
Fair enough. Okay, this is a little bit yesterday's news, but we haven't talked to you in quite some time, and it was announced that Greg Argust, who was briefly promoted,
for years, but Eric Weddle had also had a guy that he had worked with for years and years and years at the Baltimore Ravens. He, suggested him to Scally, and they brought him in this spring, and they just kind of felt like he was doing a great job. I can't say what was happening in those rooms. I don't know particularly why Greg resigned, but I think that Morgan in a lot of ways got the guy that he was comfortable with, and now he's been elevated to the position that Greg recently held. And so I think, minus the reports that Steve Saunders had an F- report card. I've heard nothing but rave reviews from former players or just people associated with the program. I talked to a donor several weeks ago about Steve, and they said that the players are thrilled with him. Morgan's obviously thrilled with him. He wouldn't have made the move to elevate him if he wasn't thrilled with him. And so I think there's a lot of people that feel very positively about Steve and just what he brings to the table. Obviously, he has an NFL regimen. I think very highly of Eric Weddle, and I think Utah fans do too. And so, he's got the backing of Eric Weddle, a Ute legend. And, so I think that stands to show for what it is. And so, I think college football is cyclical, people get elevated, people resign from their positions, people get moved around, and that happens a lot with new coaching staffs. Morgan, this is basically an entirely new coaching staff. And, a lot of change happens in that. And so, I can't speak to, what had happened behind the scenes, why Greg did it, or, why Morgan made the move to hire Steve. But I do know that there's a sense that, they're very happy with Steve right now. And there's a lot of positive things coming from that, I would say. So, yeah.
It's always difficult to ascertain what's real and what's not as far as reporting in the NIL space. And you see figures that Texas Tech is spending this and BYU is spending that. And I just wonder if you have any general idea. And I asked Mark a pretty direct question about where he feels like they are with their endeavors. And the reality is, if you're not among the top spenders in college football, you're probably not going to win a lot of games. It doesn't mean you have to spend the most money, but you do have to spend money. Is Utah in a good place with this as it pertains to keeping up with their peers?
Yeah, I would think so. I think that they, compared to years past, I think last year's football team was roughly all funded by the revenue share, which was roughly, I think, around 14 to 13 million. And that was just straight revenue share. I'm sure that there was some true NIL or above the board deals, as they say, in that space. But again, it's hard to know if you're in a competitive place because the numbers balloon every single year. So yes, Utah got more money. They had more to play with in this portal, run. I think it's at least 20 million to my knowledge, but again, I haven't had that confirmed. And so, I just take that as you will, but I think the number's at least 20 million. And Morgan and new, the new general manager, I'm blanking on his name. They've said it themselves, like Utah is not going to be a program that spends boatloads of money every single year. They haven't been ever since the portal became a thing, since NIL became a thing, since, the house settlement was enacted a year or two ago. And so, I think Utah's really going at this as a, we'll spend our money where we have to approach, and you saw that with players like Bird and Devin. I mean, they backed up the bridge struck for both of those guys, and you had to keep both your quarterbacks. But they also, said no to some players that wanted a lot of money. And maybe their, portal market was up there, but, Smith Snowden got a massive payday from Michigan. Utah wasn't going to pay him. The same thing could be said about John Henry Daly, who had an Achilles tear. Are you going to pay a defensive end that's coming off an Achilles tear? And so I think Utah has the mindset of like, okay, let's spend money wisely. Let's do it smartly. And they've had that approach with, high school recruiting, but also transfer portal recruiting. And I think Morgan is dead set on trying to find the guys that fit his program instead of spending the most on, the 5 stars or the 4 stars. And that's not to say they won't get them. I mean, they recently just got a 4-star wide receiver in the state yesterday. They got Kelvin Obot, a 5-star offensive tackle who I think was, I'm flatlining on my numbers, but, top 25 a guy in the country. And so, there's tons of things there, but I would say they're competitive in the Big 12. It's hard to say in the SEC. I mean, you hear all about LSU having a $40 million roster. You hear about the Bamas having 30 million, Oklahoma's and et cetera, et cetera. And so, I think they are competitive. I think, my assumption would be from some of the sources I've talked to that they're at the top half of the Big 12. And that's a good sign for them. But, I don't think Utah's ever going to spend of the likes like a Texas Tech and a BYU. I think, they have to be smart about their money and be tactful about the people that they choose to go after and spend money on.
All right, Jay, before I set you loose, one more piece that you wrote. Again, it was a few weeks ago now, but since we haven't had you on in a minute, I don't know if you heard, but Kyle Whittingham lives in Ann Arbor now. And ultimately, you did write a piece about the ever-growing footprint that Kyle and Michigan are carving out here in the state, recruiting local high school players. What should our listeners know?
Yep. I think that there's going to be a lot of players that want to go to Michigan. I talked to Camden Lapati, who is a 4-star quarterback. He's right in the University of Utah's backyard. And just the allure of Michigan, Kyle knows this state, Jason Beck knows this state, Jay Hill knows this state, and they will have a presence here. I don't think they're going to be going after all the 3 stars and the 2 stars and et cetera, but I would, I think there's a real chance if there's a 5-star in the state of Utah that they're interested in, they're going to go after him and they might get him. Michigan has all the money in the world. They have all the kind of pageantry that college football is known for. They're a blue blood program. And they also have Kyle Whittingham as their head coach now. And so, I would expect them to, maybe, and this is based off of the people that I talked to. I mean, high school coaches around, the metro area and just the valley. I mean, they said that, they wouldn't be surprised if 2, 3, maybe even 4 guys go to Michigan every year. And so, it'll be interesting. But I mean, Michigan isn't the only program that is coming into Utah anymore. USC's made an impact here. I mean, my alma mater, Oklahoma, is I would think the front runner for 5-star Bodie Sparrow. They also got, I think, Crew Jones, I think his name is. Correct me if I'm wrong. They got a commitment from him. Oklahoma did, and so there's a lot of programs, especially some of the blue blood programs, really understanding how good of a high school recruiting state Utah is and has been. I think that reflects in a lot of the recruiting rankings. And so, it's not unique to say that, Michigan's going to be in here, but I will think that they have a presence, as will, the Oklahomas, the the USCs, maybe even, the Ohio States and all those things. And, a lot of kids grow up dreaming about going to those schools and maybe 10, 20 years ago, those schools weren't actively looking as much as they have nowadays. And so, that's kind of what that story is about. You can go read it if you want to. I know it was a couple weeks old, but I think it told kind of the story in a fair fashion. So, yeah. Thanks for shouting it out, by the way.
You got it, bud. Where can people go find your work?
Just look up Salt Lake Tribune and look up my name. It's Jason, B as in boy, Atacao. I know it's a hard last name to spell and pronounce. So yeah, but always appreciate you guys having me on, and hope I wasn't too boring and politicians speak today.
All good, buddy.
Be better about being energetic on the radio. So
all good. Good job, Jay. We'll set you loose. Thanks for the time. Okay.
All right, you too. You have a good one.
Jason Pataki, Salt Lake Tribune, covers the University of Utah. SLTrib.com is where you go. Now, it is hot outside. I don't know if you've noticed that. Is your house hot, even though you have your air conditioning jacked up? In the winter, is it cold, even though you have your heater jacked up? Well, it's your windows, and you're wasting money, and you're probably uncomfortable at home. Probably can't sleep very well. Wife and kids might be sweating when you get home from work. Get those windows replaced and save a grip of money. If you've been waiting, good news for you. The Advanced Window Products Summer Special is going on right now, where you save $2,500 when you purchase 10 windows or more. $2,500 when you purchase 10 windows or more. You can go to advancedwindows.com or give them a call at 801-850-9100. That's 801-850-9100, 801-850-9100. Ecuador has beat the Germans. We have an upset in the World Cup. Germany had already won. It was kind of their second choice squad. The U.S. men's national team plays tonight. RSL's on a bit of a break. Kurt Schmidt will join us coming up on the other side of a quick break on ESPN 700. Ecuador has upset the Germans 2-1 your final score. The U.S. men's national team gets going tonight at 8 o'clock local time on Fox against Turkey A. Germany's through, so they rested some of their better players, but a good win for Ecuador because it puts them through. RSL is on a break. Kurt Schmidt is our guest on a Thursday afternoon. Is this enough of a break between games that you're comfortable actually doing a little radio? I always feel bad interviewing the soccer guys in the middle of World Cup matches.
This is perfect.
Okay,
bud. Perfect.
So you know more than I do. Did Germany rest a bunch of players? Because they were already through. They won the group, but a good win for Ecuador because it gets them into the knockout round.
Yeah, I think they rested some guys, and also just it's a different level of motivation. Obviously, when Ecuador's playing with desperation to advance and stay alive, and Germany maybe has their foot off the pedal just a little bit in that situation.
Okay, so U.S. men's national team kind of facing a similar situation tonight in Turkey A, and Turkey A was thought to be the biggest challenge to the U.S., and they've lost both matches and haven't scored a goal. U.S. have won both matches, and Mauricio Pochettino has decided to sit the players on yellow cards, which is probably smart. So what are you expecting to see tonight, generally speaking, as far as lineup selections, testing of depth, and what should we hope to see from the U.S. men's national team?
Yeah, I think he's got to balance a few things. I mean, you mentioned the yellow card thing. I think that makes the most sense. That's the one real item of consequence that could come out of this game is, you could get a player suspended or injured for the next game, which is critical. So game planning for that makes a lot of sense. But yeah, the rest of it is a tightrope walk between, trying to keep guys fresh and rested, but also in rhythm and making sure that, they're in form, and also exposing some of the guys that haven't played as many minutes to a bigger dose, just so you know that, hey, if I do need this guy, here's what he can give me, and that he's not overawed by the occasion if he has to step in for the first time in a do or die game later in the tournament. So it's, the coach knows his players the best, so it'll be interesting to see what he rolls out there. But you certainly have to balance those considerations.
Also have to balance a little bit what makes sense with Christian Pulisic, who has not been a big part of the first two matches due to that calf injury. So talk us through this. I mean, you're a guy that's part of decision-making processes such as this. I mean, you want him in form, you want him fit, but you want him healthy. He's available tonight. What do you think we'll see?
Yeah, I think it just depends on what that means in terms of he's available tonight. I think if there's no real sort of health or injury risk to him playing, I think you've got to get him some minutes to get him some touches, but I don't think you want to play him too much, obviously, and you definitely don't want to do anything that could put him at risk. So it really depends on what the medical staff is telling the coaching staff in that situation. And if it's an environment where the risk is big, then you don't want to take that risk. No amount of trying to get in form is worth taking the risk of the player missing the next game completely.
Well said. So according to the Athletics model, a 99% chance that the first matchup in the knockout phase, round of 32, is Bosnia. And then if you project ahead, which is always dangerous because soccer's crazy and this tournament is nuts, could be Egypt after that. Obviously, they have one of the best players in the world. But the pathway ahead, Kurt, starts to open up a little bit where you can have some fun with believing what could be possible. And Pablo Mastroeni, who's my co-host tonight on Talkin' Real, has predicted that he actually thinks the U.S. can go win the whole thing. I don't know that I can get there, and love that Pablo has the confidence, but how wide are you allowing your imagination to get as it pertains to what they could actually do in this cycle?
It's after the first two games, it's really hard to not get swept up in that. So I totally feel where Pablo's coming from. And if you start to game plan out the pathways, then yeah, I think you can talk yourself into it. But there's no easy games, I think, at the World Cup. Really, I think even when you play a team that seems that way on paper, it always brings extra danger in reality. So the pathway is going to be the pathway, and there's no once you get into the knockout round, there's always an obstacle to overcome, and I think I'm looking at the projections now too. So it's like, if you get through Bosnia and you get, Egypt or Korea, and neither one of those is a pushover, you got Spain and Portugal in there as well. Like those are big teams. Those are big teams with big players. And, there aren't any easy games there, but, to win a tournament like this, you need quality and you need a bit of luck. And, hopefully the U.S. has both those things going forward, and we'll see how far they can go. Luckily, I think for that squad, they don't have to win it, I think, for it to be considered a successful tournament. But certainly as things keep going well, imaginations run wild.
Yeah, which is fun. I mean, this is really such a cool thing. For a soccer lifer like yourself, because as I've told you before, I never watched it until I think 2006, and it was kind of an eye-opening thing. And now I very much look forward to it. But I even forget, what it's like until it comes back. Do you still enjoy this the way you used to, even though you've been watching it your whole life?
Yeah, it's we're working in it day in, day out now certainly has a different feel to it than sort of when I was younger, right, and just a kid and a fan. But but I was at games in 1994 when the World Cup was here. I was in France when we got smashed by Germany. I missed 02, but I saw games at 06. So I've been following it pretty closely, right, as a fan and just an interested party, and a fan of the game and a fan of the U.S. And yeah, I think it's easy to get swept up, man. It's an exciting time, and even looking at some of the other teams, if it's not a U.S. game, it's exciting. It's you get to see some of the best players playing at the top level, and I think the stakes and the drama really heighten everything.
What are your thoughts on the way FIFA handles the ticketing situation? I mean, look, most of the matches look pretty awesome anyway, but there are these outrageous price points that seem to, really adversely affect people's ability to get to games. I mean, look, I know what capitalism is. Okay, I get it. But there's this thing that's kind of out there that a lot of people have been very frustrated with the inability to gain access to matches.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, like you said, I guess it's capitalism. I mean, I'm not an expert on capitalism, but what I'll say is, I haven't seen an empty stadium yet. So, people do seem to be paying it. Maybe people are going to one game instead of two or three, and that's sort of the unfortunate downside of this. And obviously, there's plenty of people that are priced out completely, and that is incredibly unfortunate. But yeah, I mean, it's. Ultimately, these things are businesses, and like you said, capitalism is a thing. So I guess, as long as they don't outstrip demand, then they're going to do what they're going to do.
Is there now you obviously have German heritage. Okay. So I'm wondering, like, if the U.S. is eliminated, because I go all in on England because that's where my entire family's from. If the U.S. gets eliminated, do you attach the train to Germany?
I watch with one eye, probably. I don't switch fully, but I keep maybe one other eye on it, and yeah. But yeah, I don't. It's not the same. I was born here, I grew up here, so yeah. How you follow, even a country of heritage, for me at least, is not the same as how you follow, the U.S.
Look, I don't even know what to ask you about Messi. I just think it's really, really cool. And I was talking to Pablo about this earlier today. When you see a moment met, the way he met the moment for the first match, he's been awesome every time they played. But the really cool thing about their first match, when he was able to get that hat trick, is there were millions and millions of people watching soccer maybe for the first time that were kind of like, all right, let's see who this dude is. Let's see what he's about. Like, if he's really all that, can he deliver? And in the biggest of moments, he delivers a hat trick, and he gets a couple of other goals in the second. He's 38 years old, Kurt. I don't have a question. I just think it's a really, really unbelievable thing to witness.
Yeah, it's incredible, right? I mean, especially like, our generation or whatever, like he's been playing at a high level for basically 20 years. Give or take now, and he's clearly one of the best players, or the best player that's ever done it. And, I think, when he steps on the field at his age now, like you said, on the biggest stage with all the stakes, and everyone knows about him, of course, right? And he still looks like he can basically do whatever he wants in that environment. So he's a special player, and he does a lot of special things, and it's certainly an experience to watch him live that probably won't be around much longer. At least not. We'll see. I know he gets asked if he's going to play in the next World Cup, so he won't take that question, and rightfully so, given his age. But it's not something that is going to be easily replaced. When he finally does retire, and that's the game's definitely going to lose something.
Yeah, the star power has been pretty phenomenal to watch, and that's one of the things that I think will keep people interested in this tournament is watching the best players play their best soccer. I asked Dunny this question earlier. I want to ask you the same. I think the answer to this question prior to the start of the tournament would have clearly been Christian Pulisic, but because he hasn't really been part of the action due to injury, I wanted to ask the most important player. I'm going to hold you to one name, Kurt, for the U.S. men's national team. Who is it and why?
I mean, if he's again, I'm going to be boring and say it is Christian. Obviously he's only played a half of the two games that we've played, but in that half, you can see what he can bring to the game. And so when we play these games against the tougher opposition, and not just tough opposition, but tough opposition that is also in form as we are, it's going to be him and his ability to make those types of plays that will make the difference. Now, like Weston's been really good, but Balogun's been good. Obviously, everyone's talking about Freeman. I think the guys in the middle midfield, Adams and Tillman, have been sort of unheralded a bit, but they've put in really good shifts. Chris Richards, in order to be playing at this level and to be things to be going like this, then there isn't just one player, obviously one important player. You need multiple to have this type of success. So it's hard for me to just pick one, but I think in the tough games and the biggest moments, we're going to need Christian to be special to have that success.
So there are several teams that have looked really, really good early, and obviously France is the one that everybody's focused on. Do you feel like this is their tournament to lose? And, of course, we already talked about the potential of the U.S. making a bit of a run. I guess I'll ask you, is it France and everybody else, or are there teams that actually kind of exist on that level with them?
I don't think that in this tournament you should ever really say that. So, no, I don't feel that way. I think that I don't think anyone's got that much of an edge, in any given game against these top teams. So, I think there's certainly like a small group that, has the ability to win it, and France is certainly in that group, and maybe they're even edging towards the top of it or at the top of it. But I don't think I don't think there's a massive gap down to the next tier of teams. And, even if there might be in terms of quality and talent, this game can level things quite a bit, in certain moments, and, prevent a team like, that has that type of talent from running away with it.
So we were all hoping that we were going to see Diego and maybe Xavier Gozo. We didn't, but we are seeing Juanman Sanabria with Uruguay, and he's looked really, really good. Are they using him in a similar way that you guys use him?
Yeah, well, in terms of just using him to cover, to get up and down, to add his quality in possession, to create chances in the attacking third, to just be, honestly, this sounds boring, but just to be reliable, to have someone out there that is just going to do their job at a high level, and you just know it, and you don't have to worry about it, is immeasurably, gives a coach a measurable peace of mind. And, I think that's what someone like Sanabria does. And so sometimes it's not always the most exciting thing, or maybe, definitely not the most exciting way to talk about it, maybe, but it's invaluable.
So it was announced that you guys are going to host Burnley FC for an international summer friendly on July the 15th. Exhibition match. Take us through this process. How did it all come down, and what should our listeners know? Look, obviously this is a unique situation where we had this break in the middle of the season, which kind of creates an opportunity to have a mini preseason as we lead into this. So it created an opportunity where
we need some games, of course, and then there being such a huge gap between home games, we felt that talking with Jason, obviously in the business side, felt that a game like this would could be a good opportunity for the fans to come see and support the team, and for the guys to perform in front of the fans, in this long break between home games. So obviously there's some connections that people may be aware of with that specific club, and I think Jason worked really hard on it with John Kimball on the business side, and got it sorted so that we can host them.
Connections of sort? I mean, is there anything I don't know?
I don't think so. I mean,
okay. All right, fair enough. No, I think it's cool. I mean, obviously they were relegated, which we're all bummed about. How are you guys approaching this match? I mean, is it just a chance to stay informed, chance to kind of see how the guys are after the break? What's kind of the mindset heading into the Burnley match?
Yeah, that's sort of our last game as we head back into league play. So we've got a game this weekend. We'll play an inter squad. We'll play another game on the road, and so it'll be our last sort of warm up heading back in. And it's always good to get a game against different opposition, right? So obviously it's great to play these MLS games, and certainly we know that playing an MLS team will certainly help us prepare to play other MLS teams. But to play a team from England, from the Championship, from coming down from the Premier League, and at that type of level is always a good test for these guys, and is always exciting for them to step up in that environment.
So 3-week break for the players and coaches, and as Pablo discussed on the show that will air tonight at 10:35. He wasn't concerned. His only question was, what kind of shape are they going to be in after this break? And he only had glowing things to say about the group, and really pointed out Diego as a guy who's come back with a fire, as we thought he would. We've seen him be on the wrong side of a selection before when he didn't make the Olympic team, and now he's on the wrong side of a selection before without making the U.S. men's national team. Tell me what you've seen now that the guys are back on the ground and training.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd echo everything Pablo said. I think the spirits are high, the preparation is good. Guys didn't let anything get away from them during the break. They relaxed and refreshed, and hopefully got as much a mental break as a physical one. And they came back and they're working really, really hard. Hopefully we can step in and we don't know till the game start, but look like we haven't really skipped a beat. And yeah, I mean, look, Diego is dealing with some disappointment and has dealt with some disappointment. And, I think for us and our fans, our hope is just that, he continues to show that he's deserving of those opportunities with the national team. So if that lights a little bit of fire, puts a little bit of a chip on his shoulder, that's not a bad thing for us.
What do you need to do to either replicate the start, improve on the start, to maintain or improve in the standings? We talked about this a couple weeks ago when I said, look, man, at the start of the season, if I told you or Jay or Tony or Pablo or anyone, World Cup break, you guys are third in the West. You probably take that. You're on 26 points. You're one ahead of Dallas, a couple ahead of LAFC, and obviously San Jose, who has shocked everybody, and Vancouver are tied for first at 32. So, in order to maintain or move up, you're going to have to play some quality soccer, and obviously that's what we're all hoping for. What would you say some of the keys are for the second half of the MLS push?
Yeah, I think we have to know that the games are going to come, thick and fast, and there's a lot of midweek games, and if you have a bad week, that could be 3 games that you drop points in. So we have to be prepared. We have to be alert. We have to be even obviously outside of the first 11, there's going to be opportunities for guys that maybe didn't play quite as much in the first 14 games to maybe play more in the next 20. Just because of the way the schedule lines up, and the way rest and load management needs to go. So what we need to do, I think we need to keep doing what we're doing offensively, keep creating the high quantity and high quality chances that we've been creating, and putting those balls away, but then improving things on the defensive side, especially in terms of our set piece defense. If we can dial that in a bit more, I think if we had that dialed in the first 14 games, we probably would have, another 3, 4, 5 points, which makes a big difference in the standings. So that's what we need to do. The good thing is we don't need to, throw it all out and change everything. It obviously was a good first 14 games, but we do need to build upon it and not just rest on it. So that's I know Pablo feels the same way, and that's what we're doing.
All right, before I set you loose, here's how I'll phrase the question. The top 5 teams, as far as rankings and odds to win the World Cup, are France, Argentina, Spain, England, and Germany. Give me one of those 5 teams that you think will win it, and then a team outside of the top 5 you think that has a chance.
Oh, my gosh. Sorry. Read me the top 5 odds again.
France, Argentina, Spain, England, Germany. You get one of those teams.
Argentina.
And Argentina to win it, then one team out of the top 5. A dark horse.
Man, a dark horse? I'll just be a homer and say the U.S., but that might not be a great one, but We'll see.
All right, Kurt. Well, I appreciate your time, pal. We'll let you get back to watching games, and we'll chat soon. Be good, okay?
Awesome. Thanks.
Kurt Schmidt, RSL technical director, sporting director, one of the two. He's very important over there. He negotiates a lot of contracts and makes a lot of decisions. Appreciate Kurt's time. Want to let you know that AFP Utah is elevating the America 250 celebration. Hell yes. Here in Utah in a big way. They're throwing a 100% free concert coming up on Wednesday, July the 1st at the Sandy Amphitheater featuring country music duo Locash. Porter, do you know who Locash is? You're our resident country music fan. And coming up, AFP Utah is elevating 250 with Locash.
Don't know. Radio country. Sorry.
Okay. Well, anyway, AFP Utah is here to teach you how to volunteer like Americans have done for over 250 years. Come have some fun and learn how to get involved in elevating Utah and America at the LetFreedomRingUtah.com. Go to LetFreedomRingUtah.com. Enter to win VIP tickets by texting FREEDOM. Hell yes, to 33986. That's FREEDOM to 33986 right now to check out Locash coming up on July 1st at the Sandy Amphitheater. All right, coming up on the other side, good day to do a little sports court, and then we'll get to the 5 o'clock hour of the show. We'll say goodnight at 6 right here on a Thursday Drive on ESPN 700. It is Sports Court time. We do it every Thursday, right about now, with our good friends over at Handy and Handy. Garrett only last week, Preston only this week, leading listeners to speculate that there is a beef between Garrett and Preston at the law firm. Can you corroborate, Preston?
I cannot. I can tell you, everybody jealous. Garrett's on his way to World Cup game in Vancouver.
Oh, nice. Good for him, because he's a big soccer guy, right?
Yeah, he's kind of he's into soccer. Yeah, so it's really cool.
Good for him. That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I appreciate your time today, Preston. Let's start with the NCAA approving eligibility rule changes to combat the surge of college athletes in their mid-20s. What should our listeners know?
Yeah, Spence. So we've talked about how many, dozens and dozens of eligibility lawsuits over the last several years. All of them very nuanced, very different, where because of NIL and earning potential, players want to stay in college. So there have been all these eligibility fights, all of them kind of in the name of antitrust, anti-competition, but they've been different. Some have been, hey, I only played junior college, and so I shouldn't have lost, my eligibility. There's medical red shirt disputes. There was even the players that came out and said, hey, wait a minute. We played our 4 years in 4 years, and we never got a red shirt because, we didn't get injured or we just played from the beginning. And, so everyone was trying to get extra eligibility. And the NCAA, had a rule that was you get 5 years to play 4. And so the NCAA getting ahead of us, and I don't know where this rule started, but we got a report that the NCAA, the cabinet, the board of directors have approved a new rule. And Charlie Baker actually seems like a really measured, reasonable, good guy, but man, he has a tough job. So they have come out with this new rule, and the basics of it is that now you've got 5 years to play 5, and there are no waivers, there are no red shirt years. You got to go read the rule because it's pretty complicated, and there's a lot of different exceptions to it, but what they're trying to do is get ahead of this. And, some of the questions that come up, well, wait a minute, what happens when you want to redshirt a player? He's not quite ready to play. And, the NCAA came in with the rule a few years ago to try and address this, that you could play 4 games and still maintain your red shirt. Well, that's off the table now. What if, you're injured for 2 years and that's off the table according to this rule now. And, another question that comes up, Spence, here where it's more prominent here in Utah with Utah and BYU is what about if you go on a mission, right? And basically the rule says, it says the clock starts to tick when you enter the school or you turn 19, whichever is the latest. Well, there are some exceptions. One is it says for missionary service or military service or pregnancy, which can happen in female sports. So these are exceptions, which kind of pauses the clock. But I think the issue here is anytime you have a rule, there are going to be those people left out. And one of the part of the rule, it says if you finish your eligibility here in the spring of 2026, you're done. This rule we're doing now, you can't extend it and get the benefits of it. And a lawyer in Florida has come out with a statement already and said, hey, we're gearing up for this. It says he's worked on many name, image, likeness cases, confirmed that multiple lawsuits on behalf of athletes seeking an additional year of eligibility will be filed this week. Says he's currently engaged 55 basketball players. So anytime you have a rule like this, you're still going to run into this. And I think the argument's going to be antitrust. You're preventing competition. So I think this just hit yesterday or today. And so we'll be talking about it quite a bit more.
Yes, we will. All right, let's move over to a story out of pro football. Your New England Patriots suing for these Gillette Stadium fees. I'm new to this one. What's going on?
Yeah, it's. I read the headline, and first thought was, well, the Patriots can do no wrong, and so, but it's a little more complicated. It's a pretty complicated legal issue, but the basics of it are that the Patriots play in Foxborough. They played there forever. Foxborough, a little town, and Gillette Stadium, which I guess now is called Boston Stadium. Well, the town of Foxborough has they have issued some licensing fees to the Kraft Group, the Patriots, and other businesses that kind of use the Gillette Stadium for about $1 million. Well, these players have now sued the town of Foxborough and sued. They're not seeking money. They're seeking what's called a declaration. And they're looking at a rule where it says that in the past, there's a state law that caps entertainment license renewal fees at a maximum of $100 a year. Well, the town of Foxborough has sent just under $1 million to be paid by all of these groups. And the town of Foxborough is saying, hey, we can't just do this on our own. It shouldn't be subsidized by the people in Foxborough. We need to pay fire chiefs and police chief salaries, drone and operators, police lieutenant, all these kind of things. And part of this grows out of the World Cup. I guess Gillette Stadium is hosting some of the World Cup games, and that's what it is. And so it's come about there. And basically what the Kraft Group and the Patriots and these other businesses, they want the court to come and make a declaration saying, no, town of Foxborough, you can't do this. There's this statute, there's this state law that caps entertainment license fees at $100 per year. That doesn't seem like anything, does it? I'm surprised it's that small. It's not like $10,000 a year. It's $100 a year.
All right, moving over to a story now. Olympic gold medalist skier Bodie Miller. I have to say I didn't know that Bodie Miller may have taken mushrooms from time to time, but, he has been arrested. Psilocybin mushrooms in eastern Idaho. What's the latest here?
Yeah, I didn't know that either, but if you knew, see how Bodie Miller grew up, his parents were kind of hippies, but I don't want to go down that road. Bodie Miller, one of the most decorated male skiers ever in the history of the U.S. skiing, many-time Olympic champion, World Cup champion, has been arrested in Idaho on 2 misdemeanors. He's charged with a count of possession of controlled substance and 1 count of possession of drug paraphernalia. He was released on a $5,000 bail. He's come out with a statement. Everybody's got their statement. He says that, that there was a possession of a controlled substance that he didn't know about. His friend traveling had a small amount of cannabis. He also came out with a statement that an affidavit was wrong about a white dispensary bag containing 4.1 grams of some type of mushrooms, and they claim that he knew the mushrooms were illegal. So these are misdemeanor charges. We'll see where that goes. I suspect that he's already pleaded not guilty. I suspect there will be some type of fine here. He won't be doing any jail time on misdemeanors, that's for sure.
All right, final one for today. It's the update on the Brendan Sorsby situation, which continues to take turns after turns after turns. And since you and I last spoke, the NFL has elected to not hold the supplemental draft, which they don't do very often. I think it's been lost in all this. And now Brendan Sorsby, I'm not really sure what course of action he's going to take moving forward. But last one for today, Preston, give us an update on the Brendan Sorsby situation.
Yeah, Spence. I mean, it's Sorsby's the gift that keeps on giving. I hope everyone's not bored of this because there are interesting legal issues that keep coming up in this. It just keeps taking turns after turn, and I think it's interesting to look at. But last week the Big 12 came in hard and filed for a declaratory action against Texas Tech and Sorsby, and really a great move because what happened? They all got behind closed doors and said, "This fight ain't worth it anymore," and Sorsby said, okay, I'm going to withdraw my eligibility claims and I'm going to apply for the supplemental draft. Well, unlike you, Spence, when I heard that, I thought, he's going to the supplemental draft and he'll get picked up by somebody and, he'll play in the NFL. I didn't know the rules on the supplemental draft, but the NFL has come out hard on this. And, basically they looked at this and said, hey, Brandon, you have tried to duck this issue, this gambling issue, at every turn. And we're not going to hold a supplemental draft. They came out with a statement that they said, they basically said, your petition does not provide a basis for the league to alter those plans. The issues presented by your petition are too significant and too closely tied to the league's core integrity industries to permit meaningful review within the timeline presented. So basically, the NFL is really saying, hey, you kind of need to pay for this right now, and we're not going to be the ones that kind of let you off the hook. But now our guy, Jeffrey Kessler, who's one of our favorite characters on Sports Court, he's come out with a statement on this, as you would guess, and he says the NFL's position is a violation of the CBA, the collective bargaining agreement, and of the law, and we'll pursue our options immediately with the NFLPA. Well, the problem with that is, guess what? The NFLPA is the Players Association in all sports, and it's a union. And they have, through a collective bargaining agreement, they represent the players. And guess what Brendan Sorsby's not? He's not a player in the NFL. And so I don't know how Kessler's going to leverage this and get the NFLPA to go to bat for Sorsby. I don't think they want that position. I don't think they want to take that. I think they will probably look back and say, that's not our fight. Brendan's going to have to sit for a year. One thing I thought, can anyone pick him up on a free agent contract, just like he was a guy that didn't get drafted?
They cannot.
Submit your name to the draft.
Yeah, they cannot.
You have to enter your name in the draft, right?
Correct.
And he hadn't entered. Okay. Well, there you go. Sorsby, he's going to be sitting for a year, and better stay away from the gambling.
Yeah, that is sound advice, Preston. I would agree with that. All right, for any of our listeners who have legal questions before I set you loose, how do they get a hold of you over at Handy and Handy?
Yes, Spence, we love coming on here and talk about these legal issues. We'd love to hear from anyone out there and help you with your legal issues, especially if you have a personal injury case where you've been injured in an accident and it wasn't your fault. Give us a call at 801-264-6677. You'll speak with either me or Garrett, or you can visit our website at handylawutah.com. You can learn all about us there, what we do, and you can submit your questions.
Preston, thanks for the time as always. Glad that Garrett's going to enjoy a little World Cup action. You have a great weekend, and go Utes, all right?
Cool. Thanks. Go Utes. Thanks, guys.
Right. Preston Handy, check him out if you have any legal questions. Really good people that can help out. Psilocybin, mushrooms. They're legal in some places, aren't they? I'm sure I could look this up. I could ask AI. My brain is fried at this point.
Maybe.
Oh, don't pretend like you don't know.
I don't.
Order.
I think they've been approved for some medicinal studies. You should have asked Preston. Sorry.
I'm going to look it up. I don't know how to spell it, but they'll figure it out. Let's see. Fully legal or permitted for regulated therapeutic use in Jamaica, the Netherlands, Australia, Canada, Oregon, Colorado, and New Mexico. Oregon, Colorado, New Mexico, the only spots it's legal here. It's been decriminalized in California, Washington, Massachusetts, Michigan. So, yeah, illegal in Idaho, Bodie. Get your stuff together. I mean, we could have gone out on a limb and believed that Bodie Miller might dabble here or there.
Yes. You could at least maybe make that assumption.
I think name alone and profession alone, like if your name is Bodie, and you like to carve up, shred the pow, get the gnar, you might dabble.
You might.
I'm not trying to.
Innocent until proven guilty.
Yeah, no, for sure. Due process for all of us. But if you were like, hey, I'm going to hang out with my buddy Bodie tonight, who is a downhill badass skier, I'd be like, I'll probably, gonna have a good time.
Yeah.
All right.
Don't get pulled over.
All right, final hour of the show. Coming up next, the U.S. men's national team in action tonight. Sweden, ? And Japan about to kick off. So World Cup going on. NBA offseason is getting wild. LaMelo Ball is now a Minnesota Timberwolves. So final hour of the show is next on ESPN 700. All right, final hour, final segment after the final hour is over of the program. Brain is fried. Brain is fried today. Ready to go home and get some rest. Porter, should we misbehave with the NBA trade machine real quick?
Yes, we shall.
Okay, so here's the deal. Jaylen Brown is available. Boston is shopping Jaylen Brown, apparently. And look, I honestly don't know why. Can I just say that real quick?
I'm with you on that.
I feel like we do this every year where for some reason, Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, you want those two players on your team. But if they're going to shop Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, there will be plenty of suitors that are looking to potentially acquire him because he was part of the conversations regarding the potential of bringing Giannis to Boston. I want to be clear. I do not believe that the Utah Jazz will get involved here. I get the sense that they're quite comfortable with where they're at and watching this young roster play out. But, if you want to take a swing and if you want to add a player who's really, 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 really talented and good and has some playoff failures but also has an NBA championship, then maybe you look, as we kind of understand kind of the deal here, let's put Filipowski in it. Let's put Sensabaugh in it. Let's put a couple of the good young players in it. If you are the Utah Jazz, would you trade? This works. Okay, trade works. If you're the Utah Jazz, would you trade Lauri Markkanen, Kyle Filipowski, Bryce Sensabaugh, and 3 of your future firsts for Jaylen Brown?
No.
Kyle Filipowski, Bryce Sensabaugh, Lauri Markkanen, and 3 firsts for Jaylen Brown.
I'm not.
You would not do that.
I like Lauri Markkanen's fit with the Jazz almost as much as I would like a Jaylen Brown's. Your timeline, if you are the Utah Jazz, is still, regardless of what you think of Darren Peterson and Jaren Jackson, I think your timeline is still probably 2 to 3 years out, by which time you would be then working on an extension for a 32-year-old Jaylen Brown. I'm sticking put. Really good player. Like you said, I don't know why Boston would necessarily be shipping him. And I think in order to bring him in, you're probably going to have to overpay. So I'm out.
They're the same age. Jaylen Brown and Lauri Markkanen are the same age.
Mm-hmm.
And Jaylen has a massive contract.
That's the big one.
Yeah, you're paying him a lot of money. Yeah, I get the sense. I mean, as we've discussed, the Jazz do have a mechanism available at their disposal to add a little more talent prior to the start of the season. It's a $15 million, what's called a non-taxpayer mid-level exception. Maybe some size and defense on the wing. Maybe a veteran wing 3-and-D guy that's 6'7", 6'8", that can help you guard some of these big wings, assuming they also could look to bring Yusuf Nurkic back in the case that Walker Kessler is not necessarily, healthy or ready to go. Nurk played pretty well under Will Hardy's system last year. And then you really get into this interesting area with the Jazz right now. When you look at the salaries they have allocated to their teams their players, and we can't update this yet until we know what the Walker Kessler contract is going to be. But if we operate off the assumption that Walker's around 25, 26 million, maybe a little bit more, and then we'll have to see how they structure the deal, because they might front load it. They might, get a little tricky with the way the raises are kicked in based off the numbers. Because so next year, Jaren Jackson Jr. is your highest paid player next year. It's $49 million. Then Lauri is 46.1. Ace is 9.5. So if we slot Walker's $25, $26 million deal in, Keontae George will be 6.5. Then he's extension eligible. John Konchar's on the books for 6. So is Cody. Bryce Sensabaugh 4.8. Svi Mikhailuk and Kyle Filipowski at $3 million. Isaiah Collier at $2 million. And then you slot Darren's deal in there, which I think will start around 10 or 11 as the number 2 overall pick, maybe a little bit more than that. If you add a $15 million vet via the non-tax-paying mid-level exception mechanism, you are a tax-paying team next year. And then what do you do with Keontae? If you sign Keontae, this is the team. I mean, of course, you can make trades and such, but as far as acquiring other players, they will not have this mechanism available to them next season because they should be a tax-paying team. And I want to be clear, I'm not saying that's bad. I'm just saying that's the deal. That's the rule. That's the goal now. Have I asked you about this Tucker Carlson impersonation on Saturday Night Live?
Maybe 5 times on air.
It is so in my head.
It's funny, though.
It is so in my head. It's to the point now where I'll be golfing. I'll hit a bad shot. I'll be like, what are we doing? What are we doing? And I break into it. It never escapes because that dude nails it. I mean, he encapsulates Tucker Carlson. It's pretty funny. But, Porter, like I said, I'm not saying it's bad. I'm saying that's the deal. That's the rule. That's the goal now. That's who the Jazz are.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, period. End of story. Unless they make some massive trades.
Yeah, that's really the end story here. Is that once this is all finalized and you get your rookie contract signed, this is the unit the Jazz are working with. Part of the reason I would not entertain the Jaylen Brown deal is because he's not only on a max contract, he's on a super max contract going for the next several years, and that would probably make you like near the apron even. So, the Jazz have gone through the process of getting all of these assets for the draft and for their young roster. Well, this is it. Now it's about using the draft to maybe work the margins just a little bit on what your future looks like, because you're not going to have a whole lot of room, if any, when it comes to off-season free agency and whatnot.
Big match just kicked off. Well, it's going on right now. Japan and Sweden. U.S. men's national team against Turkey tonight, 8 o'clock on Fox. So we'll have a lot to break down on a Friday edition of The Drive. Porter, what's coming up on a Friday show?
Friday edition of the program. Bobby Marks of ESPN. We will discuss, I'm sure, the trades and the offseason free agency, all of the above in the NBA with Bobby. Chris Kamrani in studio on a Friday. We'll go all over the map with Chris Kamrani. Our Utah PGA Tour update with our friend Paul Pugmire, and we'll go from there.
There you go. That'll be a fun Friday edition of the program, so join us for that. We'll say a very special thank you for a Thursday show to Brian Dunseth, JP Chunga, Jason Batacchio, Kurt Schmidt, and our friends at Sports Court, Preston Handy today. If you missed any of the show, okay, so a lot of content for you guys that I was able to record today. The following is available for your consumption at your time. Number one, our podcast page is called The Drive with Spence Checketts. All of our shows are up there. Thousands of shows are up there. Number two, Reality Check with Spence Checketts. Episode 12 dropped today. It's NBA Draft Chatter with JP, with John Paul Chunga from the Utah Jazz Podcast Network. And then number three, tonight at 10:35 is Talkin' Real on KMYU at 10:35. My co-host for the show tonight is Pablo Mastroeni. I am tired. For Porter, I'm Spence saying, and I have a great Thursday evening. We'll talk to you on a Friday edition of The Drive. And as always, you can catch a